Todd McLeay.
Mr Speaker, pleasure to rise and speak on the Taxation Annual Rates Returns Filing and Remedial Matters Bill, and can I apologise to anybody watching on television for the last member's speech, because it was full of doom and gloom. The only bit that I thought was picking up was when he was talking about the bill and suggested that it had more positions in it than the Kama Sutra. Well, I've got to say that with people all over New Zealand that have heard that are thinking the Kama Sutra now have a picture of that member speaking in their mind, and procreation around the country will have ceased. So I don't think we should be doing that again. He also mentioned to us that all it does is fixes a few tax loopholes. A few tax loopholes. Anybody remember the last election? When the then leader of the Labor government, somebody who's thought of quite fondly now compared to the new leader, but who said that Labor government's policy was to close a few tax loopholes, would save about $5 million in doing that, and then would use that for $6 billion worth of new spending. So when it comes to closing loopholes, Mr Speaker, I can say that this actually does a very important piece of work. It's a real piece of legislation, and it's not pie-in-the-sky dreams that we heard previously. Now I want to talk about a couple of bits in the bill that I think are quite important for New Zealanders, and in particular I want to talk about KiwiSaver, because what this piece of legislation does, and what our Prime Minister has done, is focused on ensuring a very strong and important future for KiwiSaver, and an important future for KiwiSaver who New Zealanders will benefit from. Before I do though, Mr Speaker, I want to say that, look, the government is clearly focused on lifting New Zealand's economic performance, and I want to pay particular attention to this in as far as the work the government's doing collectively, but more importantly, individual members of the government are doing their fair share also. And on my right, we have Mr Paul Goldsmith. So can I say to members opposite, as they go to the airport shortly, before they rush into a lounge there to dine and then go home to their families, that have a look in the bookshop on the way past. There will be some serious fun to have, because I've heard that tomorrow a book called Serious Fun will be available to New Zealanders, authored by somebody sitting very close to me. And if you pick up a copy, it's good for the economy. It focuses on lifting economic performance. And if you're nice to Mr Goldsmith, if members opposite are nice to Mr Goldsmith, he'll sign it for you. And I can see already that there's quite a bit of interest in that happening. Serious fun, and that's what we say about Mr Goldsmith on this side of the House. Mr Speaker, I want to just briefly say that when it comes to KiwiSaver, the government has made an absolute commitment to New Zealanders that this is about saving and focusing on the future. The $1,000 kickstart is secured in law and will remain there. That's a commitment on behalf of the government. The changes that we're making reduce the government's borrowing whilst increasing focus and saving through KiwiSaver. Now I want to give credit where credit's due, because KiwiSaver is a great scheme, and it's one that we know that 1.9 million New Zealanders have opted into. Credit where credit is due, and that credit is deserved to our Prime Minister John Key, who secured it, worked hard to deliver on it, and made some important changes here that mean that KiwiSaver is something that New Zealanders can benefit from, can rely on, and that's actually very much what they think of this government. 17,500 new members a month are joining KiwiSaver, a fantastic number of New Zealanders. $9 billion was in it 3 years ago. It's grown to $12 billion, and the KiwiSaver fund is expected to be worth $60 billion in 2022. $60 billion by 2022. Now, Mr Speaker, I can say very clearly here, not only is the government committed to this, not only does the Prime Minister support KiwiSaver fully, which is why we've made these important changes, as opposed to members opposite, should they ever get the Treasury benches again, we won't touch it. We'll leave it there for New Zealanders. It's for their use in the future. It's the opposition who will say, we've closed loopholes, we've saved $5 million, we've found another $6 billion to spend it on. We might have to raid New Zealanders' piggy banks to sue that. Mr Speaker, the trust of New Zealanders is firmly on this side of the House. I look forward to the next speaker's speech. Thank you.
The Honourable David Parker.
I hope not.